I used to think every child grew up in a family where fairness was a luxury, until I realized what I experienced wasn't a mistake, it was intentional. One time I asked my mom why my younger brother got a brand new car on his 16th birthday, while I only got a cheap cake and a few handwritten cards. She just gave a half smile and said, "Because he needs it more than you." What was I supposed to feel? Sad? Angry? Or should I smile and pretend I was okay, like I had done for years? If there's one thing that hardened my heart over time, it's blatant favoritism, the kind that shows up in every meal, every gift, every glance. My name is Ivy, and this is the story of how my family taught me to be the one left out, during the very years I should have been loved like a normal daughter. For as long as I can remember, everything in our house revolved around Evan, my younger brother. He's only 2 years younger than me, but he was always treated like the most precious gift the universe ever gave my parents. Every holiday, birthday, academic achievement, even small things like finishing his homework, became a reason for my parents to throw a celebration for Evan. Meanwhile, I could ace a brutal exam and get nothing but a dismissive nod and their go-to phrase, "Yeah, it's nice when girls do well in school." I still remember Christmas when I was 8. Evan unwrapped his gift and shouted with excitement when he saw a brand new, shiny red Nintendo Switch with a pile of games. My mom clapped like she'd just witnessed her son win a Nobel Prize. And me? I got a plain white t-shirt, no brand, slightly wrinkled, with a hammer printed on the chest. "I think it's cute, suits you," she said, completely unaware of the tears I was holding back. I gave a weak smile, said thank you, and quietly brought the shirt up to my room. I sat by the window all morning, holding that shirt, wondering if I had done something wrong. But I hadn't. I just wasn't Evan. When I turned 16, I dreamed of getting an old car to drive to school and my part-time job. I spent the whole summer working as a waitress at a small-town bakery, saving every penny. Evan? He was gifted a brand new navy blue Mazda CX-5 with a giant red bow on the hood like those car commercials. My dad patted him on the back and said, "Congrats to the man of the house." When I asked if I could get some help too, my mom frowned. "Ivy, you're a girl, you can take the bus. You should save for college instead." So I kept walking, or catching the 6 a.m. bus to make it to my shift at the bakery, while Evan drove around town like an unthroned king. Even school wasn't any better. When I got accepted into a community college, after doing all the paperwork, scholarship hunting, and interviews by myself, my parents just brushed it off. I wasn't expecting a big celebration, just a genuine congratulations. But no. All she said was, "That's good. But don't pick a useless major, okay? Study something practical so you can get a job." Meanwhile, when Evan got into a private college that cost over $60,000 a year, they threw a backyard BBQ, invited the neighbors, and hung up a banner that read, "Evan, we're proud of you." I stood there by the cold salad table, picking at lettuce while trying to swallow the bitterness rising in my throat. Once, I overheard my mom on the phone with my aunt. "Ivy's really independent. She doesn't need much, but Evan needs a boost." It was like my sacrifices were expected, and Evan was entitled to be coddled no matter what. They always said I was strong, but no one understood that my strength was just armor to cover up the loneliness and feeling of being invisible. I'd gotten through everything on my own, from freezing night shifts at the cafe to student loans no one guided me through. I never asked for much. Just a little recognition, a hug, a simple, "I'm proud of you." But they never came. Every time Evan was praised, I saw my mom's eyes light up. The way she looked at me felt as cold as the kitchen wall. I started wondering if I was even their biological child. If I disappeared, would they notice? I learned how to be quiet. I didn't complain. I didn't get angry. I just quietly piled everything up inside, piece by piece, until it became a heavy stone pressing on my chest. That's what made me grow up fast. That's what made me stop believing in the phrase, "family is everything." Because if that were true, then why did I always feel like the extra? I used to think that if I tried harder they'd finally see me, but now I know, Some people will never look, even when you're standing right in front of them. And me? I'm done standing there waiting. I still remember the day Evan graduated college like it happened yesterday. A bright spring day, full of sunshine, full of laughter, and full of invisible slaps to my face. They threw him a party so big, the whole neighborhood noticed. My parents rented a fancy Italian restaurant downtown, hired a DJ, had confetti, a 3-tier cake with his college's logo on it, and a 10-foot-long banner. Congrats, Evan, the pride of our family. They invited over 80 people, including relatives I thought were dead. My mom wore a new dress, did her makeup like it was her wedding day, and my dad kept toasting guests, bragging again and again about the most successful son in New Hampshire. I stood by the buffet, wearing last year's dress, nodding along like a background extra, watching everyone cheer for my younger brother, like he'd just cured cancer. When Evan got up to give his speech, my parents handed him a small box wrapped in silver paper with a red ribbon. I still remember the exact moment he opened it. The whole room erupted. A key. A brand new house in the suburbs, white with black trim, a backyard, a BBQ grill, and even a hot tub. Something my mom once said was too extravagant when I mentioned it. "You deserve this, Evan," my mom said through tears, her voice breaking like she was handing over her soul to her son. "We're so proud of you. You are the future of this family." I tried to swallow the dry piece of meat in my mouth, feeling like I was being choked by bare hands. A year later, it was my turn to graduate. No party, no guests, no banner, no DJ. Just a quiet dinner at a cheap chain restaurant next to a gas station. The table was sticky with sauce, and the plastic chairs creaked every time I moved. My mom sat across from me, pulled a thin white envelope from her purse, and smiled, as if it contained a 6-figure check. "Here you go," she said, unusually cheerful. "A special graduation gift." I opened the envelope. A scratch-off lottery ticket. A $2 purple one with a bear on it and the words, "Lucky Claw, everyone wins." I looked up, thinking I had to be dreaming. "We thought it'd be fun if you won," my mom said, winking. "You never know, right?" I glanced at my dad. He just shrugged, shoved another fry into his mouth and said, as if I was asking too much, "We already spent quite a bit on Evan, honey. Can't keep throwing money around." I laughed, a dry, hollow, bitter laugh. There's no word that can fully describe what I felt at that moment. A mix of pain, humiliation, and despair. I was trying to stay upright in a family that constantly pushed me to the edge. And now, they tossed me a lottery ticket like they were saying, "Want a future? Try your luck." I didn't say another word during the whole dinner. I ate the cold meat sauce pasta, drained my watery soda, forced a smile, said thank you, and walked out of the restaurant like a shadow. On the way home, I shoved the ticket into my pocket without even looking at it again. That night, I returned to my tiny rented room. A monthly lease, cheap, because it had a leaking roof and mold climbing the walls. A room just big enough for a single bed, a rickety wooden desk, and a crooked bookshelf. The lottery ticket sat on the table for weeks, untouched. Every time I walked past, I looked at it like it was living proof of their contempt. I didn't cry. I just felt like something inside me had died, a part of me that once longed to be seen, loved, and treated fairly. I understood then, no matter what I did, no matter how much I achieved, in their eyes, I was just Evan's shadow. I started cutting ties, little by little. I began turning down dinner invitations, stopped replying to the family group chat, skipped the BBQs my mom still threw every month for Dad's golf buddies. I moved out of town to a smaller city, renting a run-down third-floor apartment, where the wooden stairs creaked with every step. By day, I worked in a marketing office for a lousy paycheck, staring at a screen for 9 hours. At night, I washed dishes in a tiny Mexican restaurant, hands cracked from dish soap, body reeking of leftover food after every shift. I had nothing but my hands, and my will. Meanwhile, Evan lived like a prince. He constantly posted on Facebook. Morning coffee, afternoon golf. New car, new house, a blonde, blue-eyed fiancé who'd just been proposed to with a diamond ring the size of a grape. My parents commented under every post, "So proud of you, sweetie. Love you more than anything." And me? No one asked how I was doing, what I ate, where I slept. Not a word, not a message, not a single call. And maybe that was for the best. I didn't need their pity. I needed freedom. But one night, when I got home after a dishwashing shift at 1 a.m., my hands numb from the cold, I saw the lottery ticket still sitting in the kitchen drawer, covered in dust. Something pushed me to pick it up. Not because I thought I'd win, but because I needed a reminder of just how little I meant to them. I stood there in the dark kitchen, one hand holding a coin, the other trembling from exhaustion. I started scratching off the silver coating, one line at a time, and then, I hadn't meant to scratch that ticket. Really? After everything that had happened, it was just a crumpled, dusty piece of paper in a drawer, a stain on my memory. A bitter reminder that to my parents, my worth was exactly $2. But that night, after coming home from a nearly 2 a.m. shift, my body aching, my head spinning from kitchen smoke, I don't know why I did it. Maybe out of exhaustion, maybe some stupid impulse. Or maybe I just wanted to see myself lose one last time, to finally close the door on all my foolish hopes. I turned on the kitchen light, pulled the ticket out from under old receipts and scratched it. Each number appeared, one line after another. I expected nothing. But then, 8, 15, 20, 27, 34, 42, 56. I froze. My eyes locked onto the numbers, my heart pounding like a war drum. I grabbed my phone, opened the official New Hampshire lottery website, compared the numbers. 8, 15, 27, 32, 56. They matched every single number. I read it over and over like I'd lost my mind. Congratulations, you've won the jackpot, $134 million. I screamed. Not a joyful scream, it was a choked howl, like someone had hurled me from a pit straight onto a mountaintop in a single second. I collapsed onto the kitchen floor, hands trembling, body ice cold even though I had 2 layers on. 134 million. 134 million. That number echoed in my head like a dangerous mantra. I didn't sleep that night. But I didn't tell anyone either. Not a soul, especially not my family. I knew them too well. The moment they heard the words lottery winner, they'd circle like vultures, clinging, manipulative, relentless. Evan would say he deserved a share as the brother. My mom would sob about how family should share everything, and my dad would lecture me about responsibility. No, not this time. The next morning I Googled, what to do when you win the lottery. I read dozens of articles, watched every interview with past winners. Most ended in ruined homes and empty bank accounts because they couldn't keep quiet. I wasn't going to make the same mistake. I hired a financial advisor named Carol Winters, a middle-aged black woman with a deep, calm voice, sharp eyes, and over 20 years of experience in investment. She met me in a quiet office in the city's financial district. I wore a hoodie, a baseball cap, hands still shaking as I handed over the photographed and verified ticket. Carol looked at me for a long moment and said, slowly, "First, Ivy. Don't tell anyone, no friends, no neighbors, no family, no one." I nodded, eyes fixed on my clenched hands. "Second, you'll need a legal entity to claim the money anonymously. We'll create a limited liability company, an LLC, and it'll be listed as the recipient." 3 weeks later, I officially received the post-tax winnings, about $82 million. I didn't bring home a suitcase of cash. I didn't become a new person overnight. But I changed direction. A turning point. No fireworks, no noise. Just a girl who had always been overlooked, now holding her future in her own hands. I paid off my student loans, over $67,000. I quit my job at the Mexican restaurant, hugged Mrs. Linda, the elderly owner who always saved me an extra plate, and left her an envelope with a $5,000 farewell tip. She cried. I didn't. I bought a silver Tesla Model Y, not to show off, but because I wanted to feel safe, quiet, modern. I drove it to my old marketing office job, parked in the same lot as always. When my co-workers gathered around to ask, I just smiled. I've been saving up for a long time. No one suspected a thing. Because who would think the girl eating cold sandwiches at lunch and falling asleep in the print room from exhaustion was a millionaire? But the biggest change was the house. I bought a small but elegant villa in a quiet neighborhood outside Concord, New Hampshire. It had tall glass windows that let in sunlight, a backyard swing, an open kitchen with sleek black granite countertops, and a reading room with a window overlooking the lake. Everything was tasteful, quiet, understated. The only thing that made me laugh. It cost twice as much as the house my parents gave Evan. And they had no idea I lived here. They still thought I was in that crumbling apartment, barely getting by, working and whining and scraping to survive. They still messaged in the family group chat. Evan just painted the kitchen. Doesn't it look amazing? Or, I baked cookies for Evan, mailing them over. I read it. But I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I understood they only cared when there was something to take. One afternoon, I sat on the balcony, hands wrapped around a mug of hot coffee, watching the orange sunset glaze the neighborhood. I no longer shook. No longer cried over ignored messages. No longer begged them to love me the way I once had. I didn't need that anymore. I had freedom. I had money. I had peace. But I also knew the game wasn't over. All it would take was one slip, one careless word, one wrongly tagged photo. And they'd know. And when they did, they'd come back, with hopeful eyes, with promises like family is forever, with hands ready to take. I sipped my coffee, eyes distant. That night, I dreamed Evan was standing at my door, holding a sign that said, "Assist, just share a little." I jolted awake, heart pounding, shirt soaked in sweat. No, I wouldn't let that happen. I would prepare. I would protect myself. And I wouldn't give them a single cent if they still saw me as invisible. I thought I'd hidden it well enough. No photos. No check-ins. No car selfies. Not a single clue that I'd shed the skin of a burnt-out waitress with calloused hands and a fraying purse. But secrets are like blood. No matter how tightly you bandage them, once they leak, the scent spreads. The rumors began like a cold wind slipping under the door. A message from Lila, an old high school classmate. "You moved to Oak Hollow? I saw you driving a silver Tesla around there." My heart clenched. Just once. One time I stopped by the local grocery store for artisan bread and whole roasted coffee beans. I parked in a hidden corner, wore sunglasses, walked fast like someone was tailing me. And still, I got spotted. One person saw, then two people knew. And then, my mom called. "Ivy, honey, it's been so long. How have you been?" Chills down my spine. She hadn't called in months, not since I disappeared from family gatherings. No check-ins, no messages, no birthdays, no Thanksgiving. And now, her voice was sweet as syrup. I answered curtly, keeping my distance. But she didn't give up. "Are you free this week? Mom and Dad really miss you. How about coming home for dinner on Sunday night? Evan will be there too, and Emma. You know, his fiancée?" I should have hung up. I should have blocked the number. But I didn't. Because part of me, the part that hadn't been completely crushed, wanted to know. What were they going to pull next? Sunday night, I drove to my parents' house in an old rental car I got just for camouflage. I didn't want the silver Tesla showing up as a sign that things had changed. The old house looked the same. Peeling paint on the outside, the worn-out welcome doormat, and the smell of grilled meat hanging in the air. But inside, it was strangely different. My parents greeted me with smiles so bright they felt fake. My dad patted me on the shoulder 3 times, like he'd practiced it in the mirror. Mom hugged me unusually long, her hands cold and reeking of perfume strong enough to give me a headache. Evan was already sitting in the living room, wine glass in hand with Emma next to him. Still beautiful, smug, and carrying that judgmental stare like she was born with it. "Wow, Ivy, you look healthy," Emma smiled awkwardly. "Still surviving," I replied, smirking. We had dinner, overcooked roast beef, mashed potatoes, and red wine. The atmosphere was oddly light at first, like a bad play no one knew how to act in. They asked me about work, about my health, about the weather. I answered just enough. No more, no less. But then, what I'd been waiting for finally arrived. When the apple pie was served, my mom gently tapped her spoon against her wine glass, just like she always did when she had something important to say. "Ivy, actually, there's something your father and I wanted to discuss with you." I looked up. Evan leaned closer to the table. Emma adjusted her posture. The air turned noticeably colder. Evan and Emma are planning their wedding, as you know, and they also want to renovate the house. Add a new living room, expand the backyard for outdoor parties. I kept my face blank, nodding like I was watching the evening news. "The thing is," Mom looked at me like she was begging, "the costs have really gone up and, well, the economy's been tough. So, we wanted to ask if you might be able to help out a little, pitch in. You know, as family." "How much exactly?" I asked, voice calm like I was talking to a client at work. Evan pulled a packet of papers from his pocket and slid it across the table. I opened it. The title read, "Home Expansion Estimate. $102,450. I looked up, my lips curling into a cold smile. $100,000? That's neat. You know how expensive construction is nowadays?" Evan chimed in. "And besides, it's an investment. The house value will skyrocket. And of course, we'll always be grateful." "I don't remember being a shareholder in your lives," I said, smiling. "Or even listed in the will for that matter." My mom froze. Her face lost color. But she quickly switched gears, falling back on her old tactic. "Ivy, you used to say family matters most. We're supposed to help each other when we can. You're doing great, we know that. You don't need much. But your brother, he's starting a family." "That's right, he's starting a family," I said slowly, clearly. "And he already got a house, a car, a fully paid college education. Meanwhile, your daughter got a scratch-off ticket and a good luck." Silence. Tense as a tightrope, my mother's eyes welled up. But I wasn't moved. And now that ticket seems to have hit it big, suddenly everyone remembers there's a daughter named Ivy. My dad cleared his throat, about to speak, but I raised a hand to stop him. "Don't. No need to explain. I know this game way too well." I stood up, folded the estimate, and placed it back on the table. "The answer is no. Not because I'm selfish, but because I once needed all of you, and no one was there." I looked each of them in the eye. "Now, I'll be here for myself." Emma looked away. Evan mumbled a curse. My mother burst into tears. But I felt nothing. Not sadness, not anger. Just relief. I walked out without looking back. In the car, my phone buzzed nonstop. A message from Mom. "Ivy, I'm sorry if we upset you, but family is forever. Won't you reconsider?" I locked the screen, flipped the phone face down on the passenger seat, and turned on the music. The speakers played. Sometimes, walking away is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. I smiled. The game had begun, but this time, I wasn't playing by their rules anymore. I thought that dinner was the peak of it. But no, they weren't done yet. 2 days after the summons at my parents' house, I got another message from Mom. "Ivy, come by again this Sunday, okay? The whole family wants to share more plans about the wedding. I made your favorite almond cake." I laughed. A dry, drained laugh with no feeling left. They still thought they could reel me back in with a worn-out cake recipe from 1997 and sweet-talking invitations dipped in honey-laced sleeping pills. None of them realized I had changed. I was no longer the old Ivy, the quiet one, the agreeable one, always nodding to keep the peace in a twisted family. I didn't reply. That Sunday morning, I sat in the armchair by my window, holding a cup of hot coffee. Sunlight filtered through the trees, shining onto a warm patch of wooden floor. My phone vibrated non-stop. From Mom, from Evan, then Emma. The messages poured in like a fever. Where are you? The whole family's waiting. Ivy, not showing up is really rude. I set the phone down on the table and didn't touch it again. 3 days later, I received a package. Inside was a detailed plan for Evan's home renovation and wedding. Everything from interior design fees to flower vendor quotes. Along with it was a handwritten letter from Mom, the handwriting shaky. Dear daughter, we just need a little help from you. Family is about sharing. I know you're doing well. Don't forget who raised you, who sacrificed for you to have what you have today. I've always loved you. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Then, I sat down and wrote a reply, not to send, but to free myself. Dear Mom, I used to think that if I just tried harder, everything would be different. That, if I got better grades, behaved better, sacrificed more, you would finally see me. But I realized, some people will never want to see you. Even when you're standing right in front of them. You only saw Evan. Do you remember? Christmas when I was 8. I gave you a drawing I made with crayons. You put it behind the fridge. Evan gave you a store-bought card, and you framed it and hung it in the living room. Do you remember when Evan turned 16 and got a car, while I worked a part-time job to buy second-hand sneakers? When I asked why, you said, "You're a girl, you don't need a car." I didn't forget. Every word, every glance, every time you chose, Evan. And then, on graduation day, Evan got a house. And me, a $2 scratch-off ticket. I laughed then, because if I hadn't, I would have screamed in the middle of that restaurant. But Mom, what hurt me the most wasn't the lack of gifts. It was the feeling that I had never really been part of this family. And now, when you and Dad know I have money, suddenly you remember me. Suddenly you need me. And that need costs $100,000? You said family is forever. But when I needed you, where were you? I'm not writing this to blame you. I'm writing so you'll understand. I'm no longer waiting. No longer hoping for recognition. No longer begging for scraps of affection. I've made my own way, and I don't owe anyone anything. Goodbye, Mom. I folded the letter and placed it into the fireplace. The paper curled, burned slowly, then turned to ash. I watched the thin trail of smoke rise, and it felt like part of the weight in my chest floated away with it. That same night I opened my phone, held down Mom's number, and tapped block contact. Then I did the same for Evan, Emma, and Dad. The last message from Mom before she was blocked read, Ivy, how could you be so heartless? Family is the last thing you can count on. You'll regret this. I stared at the message for a while. Then I turned off the phone. Not a single tear. I didn't feel regret. I felt free. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual and biked around the lake behind my house. The sky was pale blue, birds chirping, and the morning breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass. I stopped at the shore and took a deep breath. No more threatening texts. No more guilt trips. No more indifferent stares or hearing my name forgotten at family parties. Just me, and the life I chose for myself. In my jacket pocket I carried an old coin, the very one I used to scratch that life-changing lottery ticket. I held it tightly in my hand, then let it drop into the lake. It hit the water, making a small ripple that spread outward. Just like me. Breaking away from the old cycle, starting a new motion, soft but certain. Not everyone is born into a perfect family. But everyone has the right to choose their boundaries. And I had made mine. After blocking all contact with my family, I thought I'd feel empty, that maybe some part of me would go back, knock on their door, ask for forgiveness, beg to be accepted. But no. I felt light. Strangely light. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to check my phone every morning in fear of guilt-tripping messages. No more midnight calls from Mom, her voice trembling as she asked, "Do you ever think about your family?" No more pretending to be happy at dinners I was never even invited to in the first place. I started living, truly. Carol, my financial advisor, helped me build a solid investment portfolio, real estate in Florida and Colorado, blue-chip stocks, and a few promising tech startups. Every month, the returns came in like a warm current, steady and clean. I didn't buy a luxury mansion or $1 million yacht, but I bought myself peace. I renovated my house in the suburbs of Concord, installed sliding glass doors to let in the morning light, laid oak floors, and built a small library with a reading chair right by the window. I hung a hammock in the backyard, where I could lie down in the late afternoon, read a book, or do nothing at all but listen to the wind rustling through the maple trees. I traveled. I went to Napa Valley during grape harvest season, tasting wine at a peaceful vineyard on a hillside. I flew to Charleston, South Carolina, slowing down for a few weeks along cobblestone streets and vintage cafes. I even learned to ski for the first time in Colorado, and fell flat like someone punched me in the knees. But, I laughed, because I was allowed to fall. No one was watching me. No one demanded I stay strong for the family anymore. Meanwhile, Evan stayed the same. I heard bits and pieces from a few old friends in town that he was having financial trouble. My parents, of course, stepped in to help. Mom cashed out her savings account to pay off Emma's credit card debt. Dad sold his old pickup truck, the one he used to call the soul of a man, to put down a deposit for Evan's new house. It was strange. They were still spinning in that same cycle, the cycle that once dragged me under. But now, I stood outside of it, just watching, no longer pulled in. Until one day, I ran into Evan. By chance. I had just left a client meeting at an upscale cafe downtown when I saw him across the street, holding a paper bag from a discount drink store, his shirt wrinkled, his face a little worn out. I almost didn't recognize him. But he spotted me immediately. "Ivy." I paused, tilted my head slightly. "Evan." He crossed the street, forcing a crooked smile. "Wow, you look different. Beautiful. Successful. Like someone else." I smiled gently. "Yeah, time changes a lot." Evan glanced at my car, a silver Tesla parked neatly a few steps away. His eyes glinted with something between envy and contempt. "I heard you won the lottery," he asked, his voice strained, trying to sound casual but unable to hide the bitterness. I didn't answer, just shrugged. "Lucky you," he chuckled, but without joy. "Some of us work our asses off and still don't get what one scratch ticket gave you." I looked him straight in the eyes. For a long moment. "Yes. That ticket was luck," I said slowly. "But everything after that. The investments, the learning, the building, the silence, the discipline. That was me." Evan said nothing. My words hit him like a slap, wiping the fake smile off his face. I walked toward my car. "And hey," I turned back. My voice wasn't cold or harsh, just clear. "If I had given you that ticket back then, you would have burned it. Because you never had to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet." I opened the car door and got in. Evan stood there, gripping the paper bag like it was the last thing he had left in the world. I drove away. I didn't look back. That night, I lay on the hammock in my backyard, listening to the crickets and staring at the full moon. No one bothered me. No one demanded anything. Maybe I did win the lottery. But what I truly won was the right to own my life. I used to be a shadow. A daughter who didn't matter either way. Now, I am me. And that is worth more than any jackpot in the world? Every morning, waking up in the house I bought with my own money, I pour myself a cup of coffee, stand by the large window, and watch the sunlight slowly spill across the lawn. And I always ask myself one thing. I could have had this life sooner, if I had dared to choose myself from the beginning. But that's okay, because now, I've done it. Not because of luck from a lottery ticket, but because I dared to stop, dared to say no, dared to cut the invisible strings that tied me to a family that only knew how to manipulate and take. Money bought me peace, rest, and the travels I used to dream of during a childhood caged in by my parents' limits. But what changed me the most wasn't the number in my bank account. It was the right to choose. For the first time, I get to choose who I spend time with, where I live, what I do each day, without having to please anyone. I no longer resent my parents. No longer feel bitter toward Evan. I don't feel like I need to get revenge or prove anything anymore. Those feelings died along with the nights I waited for praise from my mother and only got a blank stare, or when I lay awake hearing Evan called the pride of the family, while I scrambled to pay my tuition on time. I used to think forgiveness was weakness, that it meant letting someone come back and hurt you all over again. But now I understand. Forgiveness is setting the weight down and moving forward. No need to carry it with you. I didn't reach out to them. No calls, no birthday wishes, no greetings on Christmas or Thanksgiving. But if someone asks, "How's your family these days?" I just smile and answer calmly. We each have our own path, and I'm walking mine. I don't need them to know how well I'm living. I don't need their admiration or their regret. I don't need anything from them anymore. I started spending time with people who truly deserved it. New friends, old co-workers who kept in touch, even when I had nothing. Now and then, I visit a nonprofit organization in Concord where I support a scholarship fund for students without family support. Because I understand. They're living the pain I once carried. One day I was invited to speak at an orientation event for incoming students at a community college. They didn't know I was a millionaire. They only knew I was someone who started from the bottom and didn't stop. I stood at the front of the auditorium, the light softly hitting my hair, and my voice was steady and clear. I'm not here to talk about success. I'm here to tell you this. If someone spends their whole life making you feel like you're never enough, like you're undeserving, that's not someone you need to keep around. Even if that person is family. The room went silent. I saw red eyes, clenched hands. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is draw a boundary, for yourself and for others. I stepped down to a long round of applause. Not because I was eloquent, but because they knew I was telling the truth. They felt it. That night, I drove home, turned on my favorite jazz playlist, and sat on the hammock in my backyard, eyes closed. No one texted, "Come home for dinner." No one called to ask for money. No one laced guilt into every word. Just the wind brushing past the porch. And the peace I had spent nearly my whole life trying to reach. I thought of Evan. Probably still living off mom, driving the SUV dad co-signed, swiping through Tinder at midnight to fill the void in a house built on promises that never quite paid off. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel hatred. I just didn't care anymore. Because when you finally escape the toxic grip of people who defined your worth by their own terms, you realize something crystal clear. Not everyone who shares your blood is meant to walk with you to the end of your journey. And sometimes, freedom isn't about how much money you have. It's about whether you're brave enough to stand up and walk away from what made you believe you were invisible. I used to be Ivy, the forgotten daughter. Now, I'm still Ivy. But I'm Ivy for myself. Not for them. Not anymore. Ivy's story is proof that not everyone born into the same family receives the same love or fairness. But instead of holding on to resentment or constantly seeking validation, she chose to let go, rise up, and build her life her way. Money may have helped her break free, but it was her growth, self-respect, and courage to sever toxic ties that marked her true victory. Real freedom begins when you choose yourself. What do you think about Ivy's choice? Would you do the same in her shoes? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to follow the channel to keep discovering heartfelt family stories and life-changing lessons.